Welcome, fellow comicists. My name is Greg, where learning economics is as easy as watching a movie. Now, you may have heard of supply and demand, but probably don't understand it. But that's where Black Panther comes in, because that movie is all about supply and demand economics, including supply schedule, demand schedule, and equilibrium. Thousands of years ago, there was a meteorite that crashed in East Africa, and this meteorite contained metals that were very valuable. However, vibranium is a very special kind of metal that has unique energy properties and is practically indestructible. So 5 tribes in this East Africa area decided to go to war over this metal. After one person ingests a heart-shaped herb that was affected by the vibranium, that person gained superhuman abilities like superhuman strength and agility. This person became known as the Black Panther, and he united all of these tribes. These united tribes became the nation of Wakanda. And now that Wakanda is united, they actually have their first big choice in front of them. Do they stay isolated and cut off from the rest of the world, or do they take this vibranium and decide to export it to other places in the world? They decide to stay isolated. Unfortunately, the law of supply and demand doesn't necessarily work that way. You can't just choose not to be a part of it, because the law of supply and demand can be explained in this graph right here. In this graph, supply and demand shows what the ideal price is for a particular good or service, in this case vibranium, and that's dependent on how many people want the product, in this case demand, and how much of the product is out there, what is called the supply. And Wakanda has almost all of the vibranium in their possession, so the demand for this particular product is really high with a very low supply. So what does that do for people? Well, people have an important choice. Do they decide not to have this product, or do they decide it is worth it and the price is worth it to do things like break the law, like steal and murder people in order to get it? Now, the king of Wakanda and the Black Panther at the time, T'Chaka, is trying to figure out how Claw was able to get through Wakanda and take this vibranium. And he finds out that his own brother, N'Jobu, is the one who assisted Claw. And N'Jobu is the only one who seems to understand that, hey, they have a very valuable resource here, and they can make a lot of money and do a lot of good by selling it. And that's why N'Jobu decided to help Claw steal it. T'Chaka has the exact same choice laid in front of him as his ancestors did, which is accept the law of supply and demand, accept economics, and decide to open up Wakanda to the world, or stay isolated. He decided to stay isolated and ended up killing his brother over this. Fast forward to the present, where T'Challa is going through the process of becoming king. But even at this point, it's not like people don't want vibranium anymore, and in fact, Claw is still around, and he teams up with a new ally named Killmonger, and they decide to rob a museum in London. This museum actually had a Wakandan artifact that had vibranium in it, and they decide to steal it and sell that, because after all, it's so valuable. So who do they sell it to? Who has enough money to be able to buy this? Well, the CIA does. And Claw and Killmonger probably looked at having the supply of vibranium through what is called a supply schedule. That's a table that basically shows how much a particular amount of vibranium is worth to them, how much they want to sell it for. So the more vibranium they have, probably the less they can sell it for. The less they have, probably the more they can sell it for. And the CIA, the price that they would want would be determined by what's called a demand schedule, which is like a supply schedule, but from the perspective of the buyer. And that shows the relationship of how much a buyer is willing to spend based on the quantity of a good that's out there. When the Wakandans learn that this buy is going down, they decide to go and not only capture Claw for what he's done before, but also to interrupt this sell, because they want to be able to control all the vibranium. They capture Claw and they turn him over to Ross, but then Killmonger ends up rescuing Claw. And Killmonger decides that the next move he gets to do is to try and infiltrate Wakanda. It's then revealed that Killmonger is actually T'Challa's cousin and N'Jobu's son, and he challenges for the throne. Now, some people might look at that and think, well, Killmonger's just trying to regain his honor and gain power, but really what he's trying to do is he's just trying to become king so he can actually open Wakanda up and sell the vibranium to other groups. He's trying to do what his dad was trying to achieve, which is to create a market equilibrium. You know how I said supply and demand is basically an expression of what the price of a good is? That's called market equilibrium. And this is what Killmonger is really trying to achieve here. Open Wakanda up, sell the good, achieve this market equilibrium. After it's discovered that T'Challa is not actually dead and that he is, just really badly injured, his family nurses him back to health. T'Challa has 2 choices in front of him: escape Wakanda or stay and fight Killmonger and retake the throne. He decides to fight Killmonger. Now, if you want to look at this at an economic angle, this is more like 2 CEOs, fighting over control of a corporation. T'Challa ends up beating Killmonger, and he has the exact same choice that was laid out in front of his dad and his ancestors before him. Open Wakanda up and finally try and fulfill this idea of market equilibrium, or does he stay isolated? He chooses to actually follow Killmonger's shoes and open Wakanda up, although with a little less killing. Now you might be thinking, hold on Greg, isn't this more of an example of a monopoly? And I would say, yeah, it kind of has some monopolistic tendencies, but that's not what it's about. But you know what movie is actually all about monopolies? Iron Man 2. And next week, I'll have a video all about Iron Man 2 right up here and how it's all driven by monopolies. And you can check that video out on your way to becoming an economist.